Fast forward, you need come over channel so aha AGH Politics Avenue. Political source training because make headlines. And the Jembre na EDB Aksum, on the Mian Brock Simu, Mesok Simu, and Raying Simu. Yakuying Simwa, a year enra, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, it's me, Asia, Ayensen Pian for Organa Axi. Now we see in a what it to just say. Already, Dumadia, Omo, Edianidia, Omu Mu, any Omu prosecution by any dear. Hey, when why and yadia wait me interfere with omo proceedings no and ye when I say you know where you why you and you do no tumbia enye the mrena dinum onwa ena obekonoko say be osun say be nyaro I can say odwan kodi bone emani wura emfa na wedie enkoje enye dey emano.
So assured that no member of his party, the NDC, will interfere in prosecution of suspects or investigation of corrupt cases. His assurance comes on the back of a claim by the party's General Secretary, Fifi Kwete, that some compatriots are cutting deals with people under prosecution. Listen to President Mahama answer the question on this matter during that encounter.
Just on the back of the oral question that was asked by a colleague of mine. Over the weekend, we had the General Secretary of your party indicate that there are some NDC lawyers who are cutting deals with some persons who are standing trial for acts of corruption. Is this statement one that you're minded by? And if you are, what are you going to do about this, especially because of how committed you are, as you indicated, to pursue oral because the Ghanaian people expect that you should do so? Thank you.
That is the accusation, that there's interference in terms of the oral investigations. I would have very conveniently said the General Secretary himself is here, and so I'll call him to present his evidence to the public. But I can assure you that there's no way anybody can interfere. I cannot be in people's mind to stop them from attempting to interfere, but I am responsible for making sure that that interference comes to naught. And so I closely monitor. I hold regular meetings with the Attorney General. He briefs me on the status of investigations. And so I'm confident that, the cases will go ahead based on their merits and that nobody would have the opportunity to interfere. If anybody goes lobbying people or paying people to interfere, they probably are just throwing away their resources. All cases will be investigated and come to their logical end. If people are exonerated in the courts, that's what justice is all about. We will do our part, and we're being painstaking in preparing the dockets, and that's why people are complaining that it's a bit slow. But you don't want to hurriedly take a docket to courts and have it thrown out on technicality. And that's why you need to make sure that by the time a docket is prepared and prosecution starts, you have a watertight case that will ensure that you get a conviction. And so that's the process that we're going through.
That's President Mahama at that encounter yesterday. Let's subject all of this, in fact, all of that encounter and the conversations from thereof to the programs manager for the Media Foundation for West Africa, Kweku Krobi Asante, right now for a bit of a reaction. Kweku, thank you as well for joining us this afternoon here on News Central. What's your overall impression of that encounter yesterday, the quality of questions, the corresponding responses as well from the president?
I think that yesterday's engagement was really, really good. Number one, coming on the back of we having this, we not having this in the last 6 years. The last time President Akuffo held this was in December 2019. And in fact, in his second term, we didn't have any of these engagements for a long time. People actually thought we have stopped doing something like this. So, number one, having the President Mahama reinstitute this or coming back to this media encounter is very good. We're hoping that he continues with it. Two, I think that generally the quality of questions that we saw yesterday, 25 journalists asking about 31 questions, almost all the questions were brilliant. And we say this, contrasting it to what we have seen in the previous years. Previous years we could have people ask, the president, your church is looking nice, and that will be all. Or in the night when you sleep, are you able to sleep? Are you a generational thinker, and questions like that? But now we saw journalists coming down to very relevant, pertinent, critical issues, providing background, some coming with data, and straight to the point questions. We thought that the engagement was really great, coming back from the previous examples. And in fact, even the president's also posture and his ability to respond to the questions was near perfect, despite a few other downsides in there.
And what are these downsides? Because there are those who say that from observation, some key critical sectors as well were missing in that interaction yesterday.
Yes. So in our count, we saw that despite the questions hovering around about 8 themes, we saw some very important themes that would expect that a meeting like this should capture that didn't come up. So for instance, health. Journalists failed to raise questions on health issues. Journalists failed to raise issues on sanitation, for instance. Even education. But for the president's initial address, no journalist among the 25 was given the opportunity. He was able to come up with a question on education, given how pertinent it's been, even in the lead up to the elections and coming into the new government. So those were issues or areas that we fell short or were missing out on. But on the downside of the president's point, as I did say, number one, his initial address was unnecessarily long for an engagement that supposed to be with the media. We thought that he could make it brief. The president spoke for about 28 minutes. In our calculation, it was about 22% of the time with the journalists, and which was really not the best that can be improved. Secondly, despite speaking for 28 minutes, the president failed to address the recent critical security issues that are popping in Daniel, in Boko, and all those areas. The president just generally made a point about how they are providing equipment for the security, but shied away from talking about these key critical issues. But for the journalists who were keen to raise the questions in the question time, the president perhaps would have, blotched over it. And then one other question about the separation of powers or checks and balances that was asked by, I think, Bernard Davle, particularly with the claims that the current EC leadership is not fit for purpose and whether he was going to remove them. We didn't see the president being very upfront in responding to that. But other than that, almost all the questions that came to him, he did some justice to it. We have concerns with how he responded to some of them, but we think that it was a good attempt that needs to be commended. How
do we make it better going forward? The president says he will continue to make himself available as and when possible, in his own words, for this encounter to happen as often as possible. How do we make it better? I've heard you mention that his initial addresses should, if possible, cleared off to allow for more questions to be asked. But how do we make it better in terms of the questioning as well and covering all the other areas?
Well, for starters, we think that when the president invites the media, he should stick to the traditional welcoming of the media. I welcome you, something very brief, and not turn this into another case of the nation address. Two, open it up and bring in more journalists. It was commendable to see that they were trying to bring some journalists from the regions virtually. How about begin to think of doing this on regional basis? If the president gets the opportunity to visit the region in one of his many tours, he could just block an hour or two to say, whilst I am here, maybe let me open up and meet the journalists in this area. It could be really fantastic to see the president do that. Thirdly, we saw a certain gender imbalance with the people who were invited to ask the questions, right? Out of the 25 journalists who had the opportunity, only 7 of them were women. It wonders how many women were even allowed in the first place. And we think that it's important that the gender balance in asking the question, because the problems we face in our society, a lot of them are gendered. While somebody is talking about how bad the road is, somebody is also thinking about how bad it is for a pregnant woman who may be on his way to deliver, right? And so there's a gender nuance to these issues that we think that can be improved. Finally, we thought that we did not see any form of sign language interpretation that is very important. So we held this only for people we would deem to be whole and persons with disability, particularly persons with hearing impairment, were really cut out for such an important, accountability engagement. So we think that all these things should be looked at going forward.
Krobia, thank you very much. That's Krobia, Kweku Krobia Santi speaking to us this afternoon on that media encounter with the president yesterday. That's dominated our bulletin for the half hour that we've been here, but we'll continue to bring you some other stories right now.
Let's turn attention to the health sector now, because the Government and Hospital Pharmacists Association has made an urgent appeal to the President, the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Health to expedite financial clearance for 599 newly qualified and inducted pharmacists who have remained unemployed for nearly 10 months since their induction. GOSPA warns that the continued delay in posting these young professionals is putting a significant strain on an already overstretched health system, while also threatening the professional futures of affected pharmacists. The association further reviews the stark staffing crisis in hospitals across the country. We're going to have a quick chat on the back of that. We can speak to Pharmacy D, Dr. Emmanuel Mensah Bonsu. Doc, good afternoon and thank you so much for joining us here. Let's start off with the staffing crisis that we could be faced with as a country. Elaborate on that.
Okay, so thank you very much. So this is Dr. Emmanuel Sowiafe. I'm the national chairman for the Government and Hospital Pharmacists Association.
My apologies.
Okay, so the key point we are raising here is that yes, indeed, these 599 pharmacists have been, duly inducted to practice. And the point is this. After the induction, these pharmacists are posted to complete their housemanship, which is a compulsory part of their post-induction kind of training and then, experiential build-up. And so it is a compulsory process. And what happens is that until you complete this housemanship, no employer can appropriately even engage you. We have instances where pharmaceutical, companies, industries, and some private community pharmacies even want to engage these pharmacists, but because of the pending housemanship, they cannot go ahead with it. And that is the very unfortunate development we are talking about. 10 months the line, pharmacists are waiting to just complete their housemanship. And because of the lack of clearance, they are just made to wait. And this is a very, very unfortunate development.
I see, Doc, but paint us the picture, right? If we are unable to post pharmacists across the country, what is the impact on the ability for pharmacists to be present at our health facilities?
As it is now, there is a very, low pharmacist to patient ratio. If we look at the World Health Organization standard of, one pharmacist to 2,000 patients, Ghana is doing, 20%, barely 20% of this. And so the ratio in Ghana is very wide. We have very few pharmacists attending to the various needs of patients across the country, and this is a very precarious situation. We actually cited an instance with the Fiakwanta Regional Hospital, which actually requires some 35 pharmacists, but on roll as we speak, only 11 are posted. And that is the situation across the various, healthcare institutions in the country. And this is affecting patient care. Few pharmacists are available on the wards to attend to the various clinical, pharmacy services, medication therapy management services across the country. And it is affecting the provision of healthcare services, and it is not to the benefit of our cherished patients.
And Doc, you're saying that the last major recruitment of pharmacists was some 5 years ago. What's been the engagement with the ministry, the sector ministry, which is health, and other stakeholder ministries like finance? What have they been telling you?
Okay, unfortunately, I will still say it's just been, verbal promises, because obviously, as we are all very much aware, the sector minister graciously indicated that they are prioritizing, the recruitment of even pharmacists permanently. But as it stands now, it has still not been done. For us at the labor front, we keep engaging the Ministry of Health, we keep engaging the Ministry of Finance, but we kindly are drawing the attention of His Excellency so that, this thing should be speeded up. Practically, we are talking about a halt in the career progression of some group of, professionals who cannot move on to the next step simply because they have not been posted to do their housemanship.
I see. You may have heard the health minister tell us that they have to create the room to be able to find that money and then employ health workers. What meaning does that make to you as pharmacists?
We believe that, investment in healthcare professionals is investment in the wealth and the health of the populace. And so, yes, despite the fact that there may be, competing interests, that for recruitment of these professionals should be given the utmost priority.
I see, Doc. We'll see how this plays out. Thank you so much for talking to us. We've just been talking to the National Chair of the Government and Hospital Pharmacists Association of Ghana, Dr. Emmanuel Owusu-Riafe. He's a pharmacy D. You're still here on News Central. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll bring you more stories included. It has
at 16, and it probably is overvalued at 10. But somewhere between there, we have the real value of the city. And so I believe that it is about stopping rapid depreciation of the currency. Almost every currency would realize either depreciation or appreciation in the course of a year. But when you have steep depreciation of about, like we had in 2024, 25% depreciation in the currency in the first half of the year, it makes planning difficult. And so, yes, Bank of Ghana has been intervening in the forex market, but they've withdrawn. And what happened was that because of the rapid appreciation in the value of the cedi, we saw an exponential increase in imports, because then people could buy cheaper dollars and so they could import more, which is a natural economic phenomenon. But on the other side, exporters are not happy because they get less cedis for what they export. And so every country tries to find out a balance where exporters are able to do good business and importers are not overburdened by high forex rates. Where that lies, I don't know, I'm not a central bank, but the cedi is making an adjustment, and I believe that it will settle at a certain rate, and we will make sure that any depreciation that occurs in the value of the cedi is within a margin of about 5% per annum. That is what.
Now, President Mahama also assured that no member of his party, the NDC, will interfere in prosecution of suspects or investigation of corrupt cases. His assurance comes on the back of a claim by the party's General Secretary, Fifi Kwete, that some compatriots are cutting deals with people under prosecution. Listen to President Mahama answer the question on this matter during that encounter.
Just on the back of the oral question that was asked by a colleague of mine. Over the weekend, we had the General Secretary of your party indicate that there are some NDC lawyers who are cutting deals with some persons who are standing trial for acts of corruption. Is this statement one that you're minded by? And if you are, what are you going to do about this, especially because of how committed you are, as you indicated, to pursue oral because the Ghanaian people expect that you should do so? Thank you.
That is the accusation, that there's interference in terms of the oral investigations.
We and some of the team because of channel so I'm not so jimre or had a sense so bad in the Dumbi Edumia, Unia, among Remoy, not in saying some more questions of each politics.